Hey, welcome once again to another One Another Marriage podcast. Welcome, one another couples out there, where we gather each week to strengthen relationships for greater impact on the world around you and greater fulfillment for you as a couple, greater satisfaction. I think I had that backwards there, didn't I?
No.
Strengthen couples
Strengthen
for
couples.
greater fulfillment,
Greater fulfillment. Right.
satisfaction, and for greater impact on the world around you. That's what we're about, right?
Yes.
Welcome, Theresa Mabry.
Welcome, David Mabry. Glad to have you here today.
I'm glad to be here. I was considering not showing up, but then I thought
You had other plans.
I had other plans.
Okay.
But here we are.
Here we are. Hey, everyone. We are glad to be with you tonight or today, I guess I should say.
Probably tonight somewhere.
I know it is.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere,
It's
sister.
Thank you. And so, Alan Jackson, right?
Is
Is
that
it Alan
Toby
Jackson?
Keith or is
Toby
that
Keith? Good
Alan
Lord.
Jackson?
Who is that? I don't know. Goodness,
I'm so used to saying,
that
hey,
is
put that in the comments below.
That's a long time
But
ago.
I'm sure somehow folks let us know. You know how to get a hold of us. One another couples know how to get a hold of us.
Basically a country singer, right?
And you can correct
Okay.
us in the review.
Absolutely.
They don't know their country songs.
We do. That just caught us off guard. Anyway, we are coming here today to discuss stress, how everyone is impacted by stress,
Mhm.
how stress is inevitable, and we will also be throwing in some stress animal responses. So there are 6 of these animals that David and I will be unpacking later on in the podcast. So stick around.
That's right.
Hopefully you will recognize one, possibly 2 of them as your stress style response.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And just a little heads up, all of them are negative.
They're bad. They're bad.
So,
As
yeah.
we tell couples, sometimes these may think they're cute, but they are not cute.
Right.
They are not helpful. And you guys will get that here
Right.
in a little bit.
But we are here today to kind of give you our perspective and our presentation on stress in our lives, how we have dealt with it over the years, how we still deal with it. We don't always do a great job at it, but we certainly try. And
we got
and
lots
yeah.
of practice over the years of stress.
We have.
Had plenty of stressful situations.
We have.
But hey, welcome to May as well.
Absolutely.
May the 4th be with you.
Oh,
And
wow.
that is today.
Yeah.
Today is May the 4th. So those, you know
Thank
what?
you.
And
Star Wars. Now we do know that one.
let me
Okay.
jump ahead to my.
Yeah. Go ahead.
That is not my official puzzle, but I will say.
But we are here to do our touching base time,
Yeah,
and
thank
you
you.
do
I'll
have
let
the
you do
puzzle
that.
today. So
I
go
jumped
ahead.
ahead.
Jump.
Yeah, our touching base.
Take
Why
the
do
lead.
we do our touching base, Theresa?
Oh, we do our touching base because we feel that is a positive aspect to your marriage, to your relationship. You always need to be touching base with one another on a deeper level than just sharing new information with each other.
That's right. So we try to model that
Mhm.
every week. And one
Right.
of these days on our podcast, since we're so new, one of these days we may not say that every single time. But you know what? Every week we're going to pick up new one another couples out there. So
Right.
maybe we do
We're going to
repeat
pick up
that.
new listeners. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we repeat that every day. But hopefully, hey, if you've been with us for a while or you're one other couple, I hope you've been doing that touching base with one another on a regular basis. Some couples, it's daily.
Mhm.
Some couples, they have to go every week. But
Mhm.
boy, we ask you not to do it less frequently than
Right.
more.
It's a healthy habit to get into.
Yeah.
We want you to do it more frequently
Mhm.
than less, but we
Mhm.
recognize not every couple may be able to do it every day.
Yep.
But you definitely cannot just do it once a month.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is not going to be healthy for your relationship at all.
Yeah.
All right, on to puzzles.
I'm not a Star Wars fan at all.
I know.
And May the 4th be with you. That kind of that slips out as
It's a
kind
shout
of
out
just
to your kids.
It's a shout out to my children, your children too.
I like-
There are our children.
They are. I like Star Wars, though. You
Do
don't.
No,
Yeah.
no. It's a puzzle to me. That goes right into my puzzle. And so, but first, it throws me out, and I apologize to all of those Star Wars nerds out there, and that's said with great admiration, by the way. But I am not that. And the May the 4th be with you. It does really drive me crazy. Now that's just an invitation for everyone just to kind of wish me that. But I don't get Star Wars, and that's my puzzle. My puzzle is today, appropriately enough, because today is May 4th, is that I and I've said this before, but I'll say it now for all those listeners out there. I don't think Star Wars has good writing, good acting,
We're going to be losing listeners because of this puzzle. You realize that?
I apologized ahead of time.
I know.
But I have to be me.
You do.
And me is not a Star Wars fan by any shape or form. Bless my children.
But I am. So half of the
mean?
podcast team is a Star Wars fan. So if you felt conflicted there and you're angry at David, be happy that there is still representation here on this side of the office right now.
What's that? Tandalorian or Mandolin
No.
guy?
Mandalorian. Oh my gosh.
Oh, okay. Well, there you
Silly.
go.
It is true though that is a puzzle. I agree with your puzzle on that. I can't necessarily say that we've had an answer for that puzzle. Puzzles don't have to have answers.
No, and they don't. That's the rule, right? Our rule is you can't try to.
And your puzzle cannot be about your spouse.
Nope.
But you can bring up your own puzzle.
That's right.
So like David just shared. And the funny thing is that you and I grew up in the 70s when the original Star Wars.
Yes.
The original Star Wars, which technically, as we got older, we were told is number 4.
That's another reason.
So crazy, right?
That's another reason. Thank you.
But that original Star Wars, and I can remember going to see that with my family. That was like a big deal to get to go to the movie. I remember all 4 of us liked it. Like we walked out, like Dad, Mom, Eric, and we all liked it.
Well, the special effects were what
was so cool for that
impressive.
time.
That's
Nothing like that had been done. So it really has been so funny to me that all these years you've never really gotten into it. And then we had these 3 kids, and it's not like we inundated them with Star Wars stuff or whatever, but over the years they just kind of grabbed onto it. And
shout out to the children.
Our kids.
Shout out to the children. But here's the deal. We know
they're kind of like those Star Wars nerds at times.
That's right. So puzzles are not to be necessarily answered. They're not about your spouse. And also, they're not to be mocked. So that's important that I'm allowed to not be a Star Wars fan.
You are allowed.
And you have your thing.
Doesn't mean that we agree with you, but you're allowed.
You're not modeling well. You're not modeling well. So,
oh my gosh.
Well, there's my puzzle for the week, ladies and gentlemen.
How appropriate is that, though? May the 4th be with you, and that is your puzzle about yourself.
Now, so what's your puzzle today, folks? As you turn towards your partner, or if you write that down, or turn to your partner and say, hey, can we start doing a puzzle together? Can we start doing, even I've heard, and speaking of touching base, couples that have success with certain things, like a high-low each day, or we've taught before like a wishes, hopes, and dream, or things. Just be able to do
goals
more
for the future.
Goals for the future. So doing something just to kind of have regular communication and connection with, and it builds intimacy. And then what that does, and we're getting ahead of the game on application, which would be that helps during stressful times, because the deeper your intimacy with one another, relational intimacy, the easier it's going to be to navigate those challenges when they happen, and they are inevitable and they'll happen, and we're going to cover that.
Right.
Yeah.
So the question is, what stresses you out?
What stresses you
out? Gosh, if you say that in like a really soothing kind of like radio voice, do you have any stress then?
That's hilarious.
What stresses
you out?
Basically, I mean, I never speak like that. I'm just kind of like, boom.
No, you're not.
What stresses you out?
That stresses me out right there.
My voice?
Hey, what stresses you out, David? No, okay. So, serious question that we have for the one another couples and for each other.
Yes.
So, Theresa Mabry, what stresses you out
Deadlines.
typically? Really?
deadlines.
And that's top of mind, isn't it? Because
top of the mind, because I think today I felt stress from that.
Mhm.
There were just some deadlines with some things, especially work related, and I needed to tie up some loose ends.
Yeah.
And I was just really feeling the squeezing, I guess you could say, of just like time running out. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's not that there was procrastination involved. There's just been little pockets of time to accomplish these items and juggling the other items that were also on the plate. And I just think it was just catching up to me today.
Yeah. Yeah.
So deadlines, but deadlines I feel like have always stressed me out to a certain point. I meet the deadline though. That's the thing. And I'm not a procrastinator.
No, you are not. You are not.
But I think so to all those people out there that might resonate with my personality or my story of I don't procrastinate. I get things done. I have little chunks that I'm trying to accomplish every day to accomplish the big task. And yet it can still pile up and you can still feel that stress from it. And then it comes out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's good.
That would be, that's just top of the mind. That's one thing that stresses me out.
Okay. Yeah.
What
For
about
me, for me, what stresses me out is when people don't meet their deadlines around me. Right?
Is that going back to me?
No, it's not.
Oh.
It's because you do meet your deadlines. You're very.
Are you talking about when you've, like with your work or different things, when you're giving?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
When I'm working with a team,
I'm not stressing you out by.
No,
Yeah.
you do a great job of meeting expectations and kind of goals and deadlines that are there. It's what stresses me out is when kind of there's a clear expectation on things and maybe others aren't following through. And I don't bat 1,000, but I do come pretty close because I'm a pretty rigid. Is that a good word? What's the good word for me? I'm a
You're
planner.
not rigid.
I'm a planner, a goal guy. I meet, but I like this when the goals, when the task has a very clear deadline. I don't like open-ended things like if you want it at a certain date, tell me. And I faced that probably within the last couple weeks because we've done a little bit of traveling and I just participated in graduation for Berkeley College, which shout out to Berkeley College. While we don't have sponsors for this podcast, the closest thing to for a podcast sponsor would be the Berkeley College School of Graduate Studies, because that's where I serve.
You are employed by them.
I am employed by them, so I serve as a director of a program and dean in that role. So I was there for graduation, and that kind of ended some major projects because the semester is through, and also for us speaking out of state, and that was like prep for that and whatnot.
Right.
But that stress is just because there's a little different workflow going on.
Right.
So for me, when I kind of have some clear deadlines, and not everyone on the team is kind of participating there.
Right.
It doesn't happen an awful lot because I work with some wonderful people, including you.
Thank you.
My lovely bride.
Thank you. So it's kind of funny that both of us were kind of on the same line of thinking there with deadlines. And while those deadlines are necessary, it's good stress. There needs to be a certain amount of like stress in your life, right? So when we're talking about stress is present, you never, like we joke about, like, if you have no stress, you're dead.
Yeah.
Because like there would always be something that can provide some stress. And like, this is also kind of like it's a good stress, Now we have had some bad stress before. Bad stress would be when we've had, something with our health.
Yeah.
or maybe like our back hurts or something
Mhm.
like that, right? So if there's a physical kind of ailment, that can provide stress. That's never fun, right?
Yeah. Physical pain
Physical pain is never
is
fun.
it adds to it, and we talk about this. May be a good. Let's put this in here. Then we talk
Do it.
about hits,
Yes,
right?
hits, right.
And hits, HITS, stands for hungry, irritable, tired, and
Stressed.
stressed. So when you have hits in your life, it keys you up a lot more.
Right.
And when you're aware of that, then you can react a little in a more healthy fashion with your
Right.
relationships. Hits impacts relationships.
Right. And so now there are some areas where there are some people who may have too little stress, right? Like there are some people who have too much. We've seen that show up in coaching couples before. Then we have others who have like almost zero, too little, right? And you're kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, like nothing ever stresses you out. But a lot of times they are with a spouse or a partner who may have a lot of stress. And so stress is still present and stress is in your relationships. And so what we want to kind of talk about today is how to navigate that, right? Because we've had the couples where one person literally has hardly like anything. The other person is off the charts, and the person that's off the charts gets more stressed about the person that doesn't have anything, right? And the other person is just kind of like, you
Yeah.
know, dude, chill, or, give it up or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And it's this like vicious cycle, right?
Yeah.
That couples can get on, right?
Yeah.
And yes, it's so true though.
Mm-hmm.
We cause stress for the other person, but it all plays together. It plays on how early on you are in your relationship, how seasoned you are in your relationship, what you have learned to kind of like let roll off your back.
Mm-hmm.
Not everything is always going to be fixed or go your way.
Mm-hmm.
Not every child is going to obey you on command all the time. Like, it's
That's right.
goodness.
Well, the big takeaway is those important facts that
Right.
stress is present in all
Mm-hmm.
relationships with all individuals.
You can have too much.
You can have too much or you can have too
Too
little
little.
stress.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the stress management is recognizing,
Yes.
don't be surprised by the stress in your life.
Right.
Don't, and
Yeah. Don't be like, oh, didn't
or
see that one coming.
yeah,
It's there.
or your partner's life, right?
Right. Exactly.
And so there are some positive reactions that you can have. We don't always, like we said, I said before, we don't bat 1,000. We don't do perfectly, but we want to do as well as possible. We want to
right.
be as healthy as possible.
Right.
So what we teach is, we picked up this early on in our work with marriages. We sat under a teaching and from a couple named Dave Dave and Claudia Arp. I was mixing their last name in there.
Mm-hmm.
They wrote this book called 10 Great Dates.
Mm-hmm.
And you could still find this book today. And
Mm-hmm.
they did the speaking circuit and were around, and they taught on stress animals.
Right.
And stress animals are stress responses that were symbolized through animals, would help us better understand our propensity in how we respond to stress. And so, and everybody has these stress responses, and they have propensities, and usually a dominant stress animal, right? Usually
At least one or two.
One or two. And so each of us have these. And although as we go through these, because we're going to walk through these stress animals, each one of them, we may recognize a time, a season, a moment that we've actually done one of these in an unhealthy way. But we want you to kind of listen out for animals that you may be individually, and
Right.
and
You
as
may resonate with.
yeah, and as
Right.
we go through each one of
Right.
these, you may connect with those. So
Right.
there
And
are
the funny thing is, this is just a little side note. The funny thing is over the last like year and a half or 2 years, as we have coached other couples and as we have talked with them about these stress animals, I have found it humorous because a lot of times it literally is you connect with one or two usually. And I cannot remember even how many couples have we talked with where we'll get to the end of explaining it. We'll say, okay, like write down which one or two. And they're like, oh no, I recognize like all six. And you're like, well, and they want to like almost be like all six. And I'm like, does that symbolize that in the last year and a half or 2 years that people in general are just feeling stress more? I don't know.
I don't think it's more stress.
Or is it just they just have a hard time deciding?
Yeah, I think what it is that, well, and I even said before, I think what happens is that we're like, hey, and we should go through these, and people, you all out there can be the deciding factor, but let's walk through these and see, because it is true that you may be able to resonate with all six, but one at a time. And
right.
So the first one that we'll go through.
Here we go, people. 6 stress animals. He's on it.
If you're keeping track at home, if you're
at home.
listening and driving right now, do not write these down. But you can always
if you're
review
listening
later
and not driving and have the ability to write them down, write them down.
Of course, we did a YouTube video on it, I believe, or
yes,
Facebook
we did.
Live, and
we have a YouTube. Yep, there you go. Other resources.
Well, the first ones we're going to go to are ones that we personally kind of have exhibited, or what we would say would be our stress animals.
Sure.
Our stress animals, which my stress animal that I have gone to in the past is a turtle.
Mm-hmm.
So the turtle is the first animal, and the turtle is one that withdraws during times of stress. Mm-hmm. So think about times of tension and stress in your relationship, when, especially with one another, when you have conflict with one another, and what you would normally go to. So a turtle would withdraw. So if Theresa and I were in a conflict, and there was a tense moment, it was easier for me to withdraw and go into my shell instead of deal with the situation. And keep in mind, too, every last one of these are negative because they discredit or negate your partner, and they negate the situation, the importance of the situation.
Right.
So my withdrawing during points of stress would do that.
Right. My top one that I navigate towards is a skunk. Mm-hmm. And a skunk would be a verbal sprayer. So in the times of stress, like today, there was some stress that came out when I was at the computer.
True.
Right?
True.
And so I will just just spray verbally, just kind of out loud there. So like the stress that I was feeling today, when you asked the question, I'm sitting down at the computer, I'm ticking through these 4 different things I've got to get done. I'm feeling this crunch. And then you say a very general statement of, hey, I think I'm going to be ready to eat supper around 5:30. Are you going to be ready at 5:30? And it was like, no. Why would I be ready at 5:30? No, I'm not going to be ready. Okay, So when you're saying that, are you saying, Theresa, I want you to have supper ready for me at 5:30? Or is it, and I just go on this like little like tirade for a minute, right?
You did.
And you just looked at me and like, I know what I'm doing. I am verbally spraying. Should I be upset about you requesting or asking for me to eat dinner with you at 5:30? No. But the stress of these deadlines, and boom, that skunk, she was out today. She got a little stinky.
So some of you may be able to relate to this, where, and it's not. I'm glad Theresa's being honest here and
I am
open.
being honest.
So for my part, I was trying to practice as clear and assertive and healthy kind of guidelines, because I knew that Theresa had a lot on her list. So I thought, I need to clearly communicate kind of where I'm at with my kind of flow of the work schedule and my hunger level and Theresa and I have been efforting at eating healthier and trying not to eat too late in the day, blah, blah, blah. So for me, it was an effort at being clear, because I knew that you needed to check off some boxes.
Right.
And so, but when you heard it, at least the skunk response was, are you saying that you want me to fix dinner? I was like, so my response was?
You were like, no. I just wanted to clearly ask if you were going to be hungry by 5:30. I
Yeah.
planned on taking care of
Mm-hmm.
getting that ready because you had a phone call to receive at 6:00.
Yeah.
That was, and so yes, and
And I
then
want to eat before the phone
and you
call.
wanted to eat before that. Once I knew that I was clear to go, like I wasn't going to have to like start something and then stop and then return to it again, I would just
Mm-hmm.
be able to, then my skunk settled.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
go on.
Yeah.
What's your next one?
So yeah. So the deal is that that's a good example
Mhm.
of kind of response, but then how difficult it is because it would have been easy for me to go to my turtle right then.
Absolutely.
And in the past, I may have more easily
Yep.
gone to the turtle, and so
Yeah, you would have just gone on,
yeah, yeah,
headed to the office.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And so the third animal is another one that I've had a tendency towards, which would be an owl,
Mm-hmm.
and an owl intellectualizes
Mm.
during times of stress, and so they'll get technical and
Mm-hmm.
logical. They'll
Mm.
get
Mm-hmm.
logical during the times, and so it doesn't mean that one is smart,
Right.
more intelligent. It just means they become a smarty pants
Exactly.
in a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
And so, given the stress tonight, I could have responded with something pretty snarky, but technically, you do have time to do these if you would just formulate a plan like this. Let me show you, Theresa, how you can accomplish your task in a timely fashion. And this is logical, how I'm thinking through what you have done. I understand what you have to do. You have these things to get done by this time. And if you let me help you, I can do that. How do you think that'd go over?
Oh, no, that wouldn't have went over well. That wouldn't have went over well. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
But that's exactly your propensity at different times,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't quite do as much turtling as you
Mhm.
used to do early on in our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, folks, you can see it early on in our relationship, for those first, married 5 years or whatever, the more David would turtle, the more I would spray. The more I would spray, the more David would turtle.
Mm-hmm.
So this creates just a vicious cycle going around, right? So then the next one that you default to, and this is more of the one that you've maintained, I think, for the bulk of time, is the owl, where you get the factual and logical, and you would present, if you presented what you just said to me earlier, if that would have come out, we're going to be looking at the fourth animal, which has been mine, right, in the past. So I still exhibit my skunk, but this other animal, the fourth one that I'm going to share now, is the gorilla.
Yes.
And the gorilla becomes kind of like the aggressive intimidator bully. That was also a stress response that I would carry and have. So I don't do it quite as much anymore, but if I would have felt any type of like snarky or that owl kind of coming out like that in a passive aggressive way, especially I think today, the gorilla would have shown itself. And then it would have been this more aggressive kind of pushiness with my response coming back to you. And the next thing you know, we're in an argument or a conflict. Oh, we don't even remember how it started, because like now it's just all about like, I want to be able to just lash out, like, and hurt. So a gorilla, though, a lot of times, will be that person in the relationship who just, you almost, you can't let it die. Like you have to become so aggressive and bully
pushy,
and
bully.
pushy. So like early on in our marriage and our relationship, I was like, no, we're settling this now. And like it became that kind of aggressor. And whenever I did that, your response was always to turtle and to go on away. And the more you did that, then the more I became pushy. So you got to start to recognize, how do you respond? So yeah, that would be the fourth one.
Which, by the way, this may be a good point to insert. Those, if you joined us last week for Fooey, so Fooey was
Family of origin.
that was last week, right?
That was.
We just
Yeah.
family of origin impacts everything. And
Right.
so for me, I really feel like, and you may be able to share with this too, is that I feel like the turtle, my dad was
Absolutely.
more introverted and my mom a little bit more verbal, and so
She was a skunk.
probably skunk, and
probably a,
and dad probably turtle, and
for
so
sure.
kind of seeing that modeling and not wanting to have that. Like I don't know if I'm conflict avoidant in general. I like to kind of like, hey, let's take care of this, but but there's a turtling up, especially with this relationship. And don't you all feel like your married relationship feels a little different than every other relationship that you have?
Sure.
And so when stress happens, you either you let your hair down a lot more, or you are more careful because it's like, I got to live with this person.
Right.
And so family of origin is a huge piece. And if you haven't listened to that podcast, reach back to that one, or we've done also a YouTube video on that if you're more of a visual person with processing family of origin.
Right.
So those are the FUIs.
Right.
The FUIs. But the next one would be...
Okay, so this is number 5.
This is number 5, and this is one that you and I really don't have, but it's not like we have never used this one, but it goes back to feeling like all 6 have been used.
Right.
So the 5th one would be a donkey, someone who gets stubborn, that digs in their heels. That's even if they recognize that they're wrong,
right?
They will still dig in their heels and like stand their ground, and they're like, I'm not moving on this no matter what. So getting stubborn during points of stress.
Yeah, that's true donkey. When true donkey even recognizes in the course of whatever's happening that they are wrong. So that is true donkey.
Yeah. So someone who's who just gets stubborn,
right,
and digs in your heels. Maybe you resonate with that one today.
The final one, number 6, would also be one that you and I do not recognize as much in ourselves, but that would be the chameleon. The chameleon would be the one who just wants to distract or blend in, get along. So what they do is they will redirect the focus from the stress to something else, right? So whatever's taken place, when they start to feel that like uncomfortableness of, this is a situation I don't like, there's stress going on here, that chameleon will distract and take that focus off. Sometimes they use humor in this way, and we've met some really great chameleons over the years. There's some great people out there that are just, they can deflect something very quickly with humor. And so that is not David nor I.
And it could be something like, just, hey, let's go shopping.
Right.
Let's go play a game. Let's go binging on Netflix.
Right.
Let's go have sex.
Right.
Let's do anything
else.
Deal with the issue right at hand.
Right
so
at
anything
hand.
To distract right in the moment. So the stress animals, going from top to bottom once again, would be a turtle withdraws, a skunk will verbally spray, an owl will get logical, a gorilla will become pushy, a donkey will dig in their heels and get stubborn, and a chameleon will distract from the situation. All 6 of them are going to minimize and negate the partner and the situation, and that's not healthy.
No.
So the big thing is being able to recognize your stress animal, to minimize your stress animal, and to redirect toward healthy behaviors. And so we encourage, once again, recognize what your stress animal is. And so let me just pause there for a minute. And one other couples out there, what is your personal stress animal? What do you tend to go to? And we're going to be deliberately slow right now to give you a chance to think about this. What is your propensity? Is it the skunk or the turtle, the skunk, the owl, the gorilla, the donkey, or the chameleon? Recognize that in yourself, and then consider what your partner is. But you're not allowed to say, "Hey, you sound like a skunk."
Right.
But recognize yourself, and then if you're listening to this together, or if you both have listened to this, maybe talk about what you think either one of you are.
Not maybe talk about. You should.
You should talk about it, but then also be honest enough, be humble enough to be able to hear from your partner if they're saying, actually, I think this really comes
Right.
out. Because, Theresa Mabry, what is it? Your partner's perception is
Your reality.
your reality. That's right. And so whether you like it or not, if they kind of see you as, a gorilla,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't think that, maybe you should think, well, maybe there are some ways that I'm being a gorilla, I'm being
I have
pushy.
gorilla-like tendencies. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Because our spouse should have, they know us the best. They get to see,
Mhm.
these negative responses. So 9 times out of 10, when we coach couples, when we're talking with people at an event, a seminar, a workshop, the light bulb goes on instantly for them to type their spouse or their partner, right? Sometimes it's harder for them to type themselves, but we all quickly go, well, that's you, that's you. So, yeah. So take time. You should take time to investigate for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and then think about for your partner, and then
Mhm.
definitely take time to share these with each other.
So recognize, minimize, and redirect. And so
Mhm.
it's an intention. And my friends, it takes an intentionality,
Mhm.
right? I
It
mean,
does.
you've got to, I mean, you don't see a difference in your marriage, the health and vitality of your marriage, if you don't do one small thing at least differently than what you did yesterday.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so do one new thing, one different thing today. Break one bad habit, one small bad habit, or start one good habit today to make a difference in your most important relationship, and that is your marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So recognize, minimize, redirect.
Mm-hmm. Another healthy strategy to handle stress would be to practice healthy assertiveness and active listening, right? So when I was stressed today, and it was it was obvious, David was trying to practice some healthy assertiveness and active listening with me to just not look like he was on the attack necessarily, but that he was helping me process. And I was cognizant of that. I was now I may not have done a decent job, but I was in my kind of trying to move my chair out of my emotional brain into my thinking brain and kind of go, okay, he's clearly communicating. He's got some healthy assertiveness going on. He's trying to rephrase back. No, I'm not asking you to fix the meal, just asking if you were going to be ready so that I would know whether you wanted to eat with me or not, So having that healthy assertiveness and active listening are very helpful in stressful situations, or when I find myself in a stressful situation, possibly that I'm having to handle or deal at work, I may actually utilize that healthy assertiveness and active listening to just verify, because a lot of times, I may have someone come to me. They are the stressed one. I can see this response coming out of them. I have a choice right then. I can also respond stressful back to them, or I can try to help process healthy assertiveness, active listening.
That's right. That's right. So cooler heads will prevail.
Uh-huh.
And cooler heads prevailing, talk about that. I tell you, sometimes stress is so intense that we really just need to take a time out.
That's a good one.
We need to just really take a time out and have permission. And we say this over and over again. Have a tool and have permission to use it. Okay? Have permission, give permission, and own the permission. So, but first you have to have the tool. So in other words, if both of you have an understanding that it's fair and square, that during the most emotionally heated times, one of the stressful times, and you're having conflict, that you have permission to turn and say, I really need a timeout right now so that I can put a gap between stimulus and response,
Right.
so that I can put a space here, so I can get from my, and once again, these are phrases. If you're new to our podcast and new to One Another Marriage, these are things that you're going to hear over and over again. We teach that you, during points of conflict, during points of stress, is find a specific opportunity, a deliberate opportunity to pick up your chairs in your brain from your emotional part of from the emotional part of your brain, from that room,
Mm-hmm.
and move to the thinking room.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do that during stress, when your stress animal is really kicking and you need a break so that you can, this is not turtling up and withdrawing. It's not being a chameleon and distracting, but this is a legitimate artificial timeout that you're putting in, but you both agree the tool's a timeout. You both are agreeing and you have permission to use the tool, but then you agree to come back when cooler heads are prevailing.
Right.
And so a timeout during times of stress is an important tool to use.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I feel like because I've already shared, like, this week in general had a lot of different things on the plate. Certain things on the plate were a little bit more tight on the schedule, which was causing some extra stress. But like yesterday, one of the things I did, it wasn't necessarily because we have to talk to people too, not just about like if this is stress between you and your spouse, but sometimes this is just your individual stress. So you got to be able to cope and manage your individual stress as well, because that will play into your relationship. And if you think it doesn't, you're dead wrong. Because you bring it.
It's
you
that
bring
ripple
it in.
effect, isn't
Yep,
it?
it's that ripple effect. So yesterday, one of the things that was stressing me out was, good Lord, we had some hot days recently, plus rain. And like, what is it about weeds? What is it about weeds? Oh my gosh. And so like,
this is your puzzle.
oh my gosh. And so the flower bed in the front, now granted, like we're still early into some springtime here, right? But it's always this season, and the weeds just, boom, they're just right there.
Oh.
And nothing gives me more stress than to pull in the driveway and just see, like, I mean, oh my gosh, really? So I knew yesterday, I was like, I've got to go attack the weeds. I'd had it on my list for like 3 days, and you had heard me say for like 3 different days, I need to get out there, I need to get out there. And finally I was like, you know what? I'm just going. I'm taking 30 minutes and I got to go out. I didn't take my phone. I didn't take any earbuds. I was just outside in the sun by myself pulling weeds.
Yeah.
There is something very therapeutic about it, because you're just listening to, kids were playing across the street, people were out taking walks, birds were chirping, different things. And like, to just not have, too many times I feel like a stress strategy for a lot of people individually is to just pull out their phone and veg or do something like that. And sometimes that is helpful, but sometimes it adds to the stress because you don't technically deal with what you need to deal with. And so while I was out there, I was just able to just kind of like think. I was able to process. I took my 30 minutes. I accomplished a small part, which was helpful, because today when I drove in, the front flower bed, at least, the weeds were gone, and it just, and it just helped. It helped. Yeah. So sometimes you got to find those individual ways to manage your stress.
Yep.
People exercise, you got to find something. But make sure, before we end this here, I want to just throw this in. Whenever you are taking these timeouts or whenever you are managing these stressors, you still have to come back and take care of the items. So like for me, I still had to come back, had to still accomplish a couple of things so that I could meet the deadlines. If it is a timeout where you and your spouse have gotten stressed in a heated way, you still have to come back and resolve, okay? And the other thing is you should never be, a stress strategy on how to manage stress should never involve abuse, addictions, or negative
Yeah.
other responses like that,
Yeah.
right?
Don't go to unhealthy
Don't go to
habits.
unhealthy. If
That's
you
right.
go to unhealthy habits, you have just created.
Which it's easy to do for
Oh my
many
gosh, yes.
folks. And so,
I mean, how many people? I mean, like, I
Mhm.
would love to go and like eat ice cream or brownies all the time, like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's just not helpful. So you gotta, like you said earlier, I think that was an important point. You gotta at least take a step in, take one step, one small step in the direction
Yep.
to handle it, which that's what we're trying to say.
That's right. That's right. Well, folks, before we leave you today, we want to give you your verse for the week, and it is out of Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 and 7. And it says, "Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank Him for all He has done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus."
Awesome. That is a great verse. All right. Well, hey, thanks so much for joining us today. Please remember to subscribe to this podcast. You can also rate it on iTunes, especially. They love that. And give a review when applicable. You can also find other ways to connect with us through our website, oneanothermarriage.com. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube also at One Another Marriage. And we would love to have you follow, subscribe to those social media platforms as well.
That's right. So next week, we're going to gather with you again, One Another Couples, and we are excited because we're going to begin a series on Love Step. So a lot of people ask why we're called One Another Marriage, and we have what's called Love Step, and that is to love one another, serve one another, touch one another, encourage one another, and have peace with one another. We're actually going to talk about this next week, and for the next several weeks, we're going to unpack many of those. So
Absolutely.
Join us next Tuesday as we drop another podcast, and we really appreciate you joining us today.
Bye now.